Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder. It's Athletics Chat 27.
27.
Stuart, the charming Stuart Weir, is in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world. I'm in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, still counting the votes here. But we do have a president-elect. I'm going to just leave it at that. Stuart, great to see you.
Hi.
And Stuart, just so you know, I'm not one of the official vote counters, okay?
Right.
And I voted a week before our election, and there was 2 people in line, and it was pretty special. But my friends told me, who work across the street from the little election place, and it was just in a little city hall, that there was a line all day, and literally until 8 o'clock that night. So it's nice to see fellow Americans out voting. I think about almost 100 and I think when it gets end, it'll be about 153 million. So that's pretty cool. In California, where I spend part of my time, and Wisconsin, where I spend the other part of my time, they both voted for the president-elect. So that's good to hear.
I hope you didn't vote in both places and spoil the whole thing.
No, I didn't, and I didn't use any, dead people or anything. Although, one of the funniest stories I ever heard was from President Jimmy Carter, and he talked about how he lost his first election in 1948, and when they recounted it, there were 3,000 dead people that voted, and the Georgia Supreme Court actually allowed it. He lost the election because in Georgia at the time, apparently you could count dead people's votes till the end of the year. So, kind of interesting, but,
Yeah.
I've digressed. But we're going to get on topic now, and we're going to be talking about the Olympics. And you were on the Tokyo briefing, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what the Tokyo briefing was and all those fun things?
Well, every year, every Olympics, they do a press briefing where people get invited to the host city a few months out to find out what's happening. But of course, they couldn't do that this year. So it was all done virtually.
Okay.
And the main message I think that came across was that they're absolutely committed to holding the Olympics.
Okay.
They say that, to quote Thomas Bach, having a vaccine would be a positive, but it's not a must-have for the Olympics to take place. And so they've got plans in place to do the Olympics safely, even without a vaccine.
Okay.
And that will involve social distancing and masks and so on. And of course, this was mainly for the media, but the things that would be different potentially for the media are that, how normally we can go into any sport.
Sure.
Just within, they're saying that they may have to ticket all the events to make sure they don't get too many people in.
Okay.
And that also mixed zones will have to be carefully controlled, that you don't get too many people in so they can still social distance. And worst case scenario, that will just be a virtual mixed zone.
Yeah.
They're going to stream all the press conferences and encourage people to watch them in their seat rather than actually go to them.
Okay.
So it's potentially going to be quite a different Olympics from what we're used to. And then the village, they're saying where the athletes live, may be a secure zone with no visitors, no day passes, and normally there's about 3,000 day passes every day, which that would be sad for an athlete who may just really want to take his wife, girlfriend, husband, parents into the village to show them that experience. That potentially that will not be allowed because they're saying we just got to put the athletes in a bubble and keep them safe.
Wow.
We're getting good news this week about vaccines, but again, how quickly they can get those and get them to virtually every country of the world. Again, Thomas Bach has said in the last couple of days that he is trying to make accredited people for the Olympics in any role a priority for getting the vaccine, which presumably means that they're going to do that through money.
Wow.
They're going to try and buy vaccines so that. But you know, there's something today on social media which is very interesting. I won't name the athlete, but there was an American athlete, a well-known American athlete, who made a comment about if they make it compulsory to have had the vaccine before you can compete, will people actually do it? And her comment was, I would like to see Thomas Bach take the vaccine too, to make sure he doesn't turn green all over his body through having this strange chemicals put into him.
Wow.
And you know what would happen if a top athlete says, well, no, I'm not taking the vaccine?
They're probably not going to be able to go.
Yeah. So it's not straightforward, but I thought that the Japanese were working really hard to do the best they can. I think Thomas Bach again said today or yesterday that he was confident that they could have spectators. But again, whether he means 50,000 or 10,000, you know, I haven't heard of any sporting event yet that's had full capacity.
Well, one of the people that I rely on who has been involved at the global federation level and he's on the sponsor side, pretty much 100% on when we've had issues in the past.
Mm-hmm.
His comment is that they've got probably till April to really make a decision.
Yeah.
He told me that Japan right now has got 160 nations, including the United States, on his list of countries who cannot come in. And I am having almost the same reaction as I had last week when European Athletics announced that Istanbul will be the 2023 candidate for the European Indoor. I love Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the World Indoors. But I wonder, in this political climate, is Turkey, how Turkey will receive journalists. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were concerned when we went to the World Cup in 2014. I could not put journalists on my thing. I put sports. I think I was told to put sports official, and I got in trouble last year trying to go to China when I put journalist on my bid. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about those things. Yeah, there's the news about the vaccines. We have the one from Pfizer. They say it's 90%. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, because they're American companies, a second company just came out and said their testing has shown that they're 95% effective. So, you know, one American company does one thing, one does another. But that athlete who remains unnamed, pretty typical with Americans. Dr. Fauci said that over 60% of Americans say they may not even take the first go-round of the vaccine. And Governor Cuomo in New York got into a row with the president regarding, well, do we know, has this thing been pushed through? What's going on? So we've got all those crazy things. I love the Olympics. It's my part of the reason why I put up with everything else. And, you know, that and the World Championships, I can close my eyes now and think about how wonderful London in 12 was, and, you know, how London in 2017 was spectacular, you know. And so, but we're in a pandemic right now. And
just to go back on one thing you said,
sure.
You mentioned the fact that over 160 countries At best, if you're allowed in, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Well, they did say that they are in discussions with the Tokyo authorities about that, with the expectation that they will get an exemption for anyone who is accredited for the Olympics. Whether that would mean anyone who's bought a ticket, I don't know. But I mean, clearly, most people who are going to the Olympics will not be able to go 2 weeks early and sit in a hotel room for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And again, who's going to pay for that? Presumably not the Japanese government.
Yeah. No, it is going to be a challenge. And one wonders how sponsors are going to deal with it if you're going to see more and more virtual things.
I mean, go on. But, I was going to say, speaking personally, I have got to pay the second part of my accommodation in April. So therefore, until April, I can just watch it all happening and decide.
Yeah, no, I think that, I've got to deal with my accommodations in the next couple of weeks. And I found some decent airfares. But I know that if I get the airfare, what I may just do is buy the miles, so that whatever amount of miles there's a special deal with United till the end of the month that may make a lot of sense, and I may go for that to take the approach. What do you think right now, and knowing after your conversation and realizing that we're dealing with a little bit of Olympic speak, and that as much as I respect President Bach, he does drink the Kool-Aid a bit. And I say that with affection. I think that he's done many good things for the world of sport, and this must be a very trying time to manage a global sport, and people need an Olympics. What's your belief that it's going to actually happen?
Well, the last time you asked me, I said 50-50, and I think I'm actually now going to go certainly 55-45 and favor maybe even 60-40.
Okay.
I think it's become more likely because of hearing the commitment of the Japanese, and also the fact that we are talking about having a vaccine. Although, the scientists are saying to us, the vaccine will help you next winter, but don't expect it to be changing things much before next winter.
Yeah, my son has gently told me that for me to go anywhere, I'm going to need a vaccine, and I tend to believe that. We have been very careful, and I'm preparing myself that that over the next 4 to 6 months in Wisconsin, we will be watching a lot of Netflix, even more so than we've done. But we'll be ordering everything off Amazon or from do it the way you do, because I'm just not going to take any chances. And, it's even today, North Dakota and Utah, both who have Republican governors, have locked down. And the Simplot games, which I'm not sure if you're aware of them, they're held in Idaho each year. It's this glorious celebration of high school indoor track and field. It's been around forever. And they hold it in February. They've already canceled it because the state of Idaho, the people with Simplot, it's a sugar company, just couldn't guarantee that 4,000 kids, can be saved. So, so I think that, so we're at 60, we'll say 60-40 for the Olympics. Let's go to our topic 2. You were going to explain the GB system of funding. Thank you for both of those articles. I got those up, and people seem to be responding to them. I also did an interview with Cindy O'Feely, and she was just talking about the championships and training a little bit. And you've got a nice text-based one. We'll get that up too.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the funding system in Great Britain.
Well, first of all, you need to understand the context that there are no sports scholarships in the UK.
Okay.
So therefore, if you go to university, you fund that yourself, and you do sport. And if you discover during that time that you perhaps have the potential to become a professional athlete, you've either got to get a sponsor, or you get funded by British Athletics. And now there's 117 athletes who, for the next 12 months, have been offered what's called membership of the Olympic or Paralympic World Class Program.
Okay.
So there were 69 for the Olympics and 48 for the Paralympics. And interestingly, it's at two levels. For the Olympics, out of that 69, we've got 30 at podium level, 16 at potential, and then 23 for relay. And I'll explain all those as we go along.
Okay.
And basically what that means is that you will receive a sum of money in the podium up to $36,000, which is tax-free.
Wow.
To fund you for the year. So effectively, you are employed by British Athletics. Legally, it's slightly different, but you're effectively employed, and it means that you can become a full-time athlete. But there are conditions. I mean, you mentioned Cindy O'Feely, and she declined funding a couple of years ago because she didn't want to accept the conditions. Like when she was injured, British Athletics says, well, look, we want you to base yourself in England so that our medical team can look after you. And she wanted to stay in the States, where she's now married. And so very amicably, she said, look, that's what I want to do. So rather than be in conflict with you over not fulfilling, I'll resign from the program and you can stop paying me.
Wow.
I mean, for example, if you're in the relay squad, British Athletics may say, right, we are putting a team into the Drake relays, we're putting a team into the Penn relays, and you've got to run in it.
Okay.
So therefore, your program is not your own. It's mapped out by the national coach rather than your personal coach. I mean, to some extent, if you're getting $36,000 a year, it's not unreasonable for them to say, well, we're going to determine which races you are to run in. But some people don't want to do that and opt out. And, relays have been a great source of medals for us. And it's not the case. I mean, the way we do our relays is so totally different from the US. I mean, I was talking to Des Bryant in Doha, and she said that literally the girl who gave her the baton had probably practiced with her twice before the race. Whereas with us, we will select a relay squad at the beginning of the year, and they will have several relay camps where they have to go and where they'll practice. Because our thinking is, well, if you take the 4 fastest American sprinters, we don't have 4 people as fast as that. But if we can be just slicker on the changeovers, perhaps we can compete with them. And for example, at the World Relays, we will have a training camp before that. Anniversary games, we normally have all the relay athletes there for a week. And the anniversary games come to the end of that week. And so the reason the government puts the money into this is to get medals at the Olympics and the World Championships. So it's all geared towards medals. And that's why we put so much emphasis. 23 athletes funded for relays. Because in 2017, we had a target of 6 medals, and 4 of them came from relays.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you go back to 2012, we didn't have a women's relay in the Olympics because we failed to qualify. And relay running was at quite a low ebb. And people like Stephen Maguire have revolutionized this and put systems in place to bring the best out of it. So that's how we do it. I mean, but I would be interested to know what you think. Not being part of the British culture at all.
Sure.
Do you think that's a good way of delivering medals and running a world-class program?
I think it's been amazingly successful. And as I've said before, I think, two of the themes that have been going through global athletics, or the three big themes through global athletics in the last 20 years has been the technical event advancement of the Chinese, the resurrection of British athletics, and the revitalization of American athletics. We do it very differently. I think a system like yours makes tremendous sense. We have the USA Track and Field Foundation, which gives some scholarships. USA Track and Field gives money to people who aren't funded. Most of the athletes who are international or who are making a U.S. Olympic or World Championship team are sponsored by Nike, Adidas, Brooks. You see Nike, Adidas, and ASICS, with Brooks there, Hoka, and Saucony, and a few others. But the truth is, 90% of those athletes, that's Nike and Adidas and New Balance and Brooks, really, in the bunch, and 70% of that is Adidas and Nike. I love your relay system. I think since 1912, I've got a document that goes, I think, through 2008, which I've got to update, and I think we've dropped the baton 12 times. And there's got to be a better system. Part of it is we've got this big country with incredibly talented athletes. And for some reason, even though we love American football and I love American basketball, the team idea in professional track and field is still limited. And I think that, like, for example, in Dubai or in Doha, we had 2 400-meter hurdlers and 2 400-meter runners in the 4x4. We tend to be a little smarter in the 4x1, but because we go so fast, that's where we make the mistakes. We could beat in the 4x4 because countries like the Bahamas know that all you need is 4 really talented 400 people who can put some pressure on, and even the smallest country can win the 4x4 or the 4x1. What you guys have shown is that you've been very pragmatic about it, and I think it makes a lot of sense. There's some people, for the life of me, that Harry Koppel and Jesse Knight are not getting funding. You guys seem so damn logical. Why they're not funded, I don't get. I do have some issues with some of the people in power, some of the coaches that have recently been put in, because I look and I see a wealth of talent in the UK. I respect the coaches immensely. And I recall when American coaches like Raina Ryder and, Terrence Mahone, who both got a lot of grief when they came over to the UK. And I think that British athletics was trying at the time to up the game. It wasn't that they were saying there weren't enough good British coaches, but here's some people that could help us in some areas where we need some help. And I think that was resented. Much like over here, there's a ton of really good U.S. coaches that USATF has nothing to do with. And it's not because the guys are bad or women are bad. It's just because they don't play the games that some of the other U.S. coaches do, right? There's politics in both. No, I think the system that you guys have is spectacular. It's obviously successful. The caveat is it needs to be fine-tuned sometimes.
Yeah.
I was very worried that Joe Coates was going to have to, be the bad person again, and cut a lot of the funding.
Well, yeah. Let me answer your question about
Please.
Harry Koppel and Jesse Knight, which I totally agree. It's a travesty. But the reason I'm afraid is our old friend COVID. They just felt they didn't have the money to increase the number from last year.
Yeah.
And again, not unreasonably, they took the view that, let's say, how could we drop Asha Phillip from the program when she hasn't run this year because she struggled to train because the facilities were all closed. So, they said, look, it would be unfair to drop somebody just because of the difficulty.
Yeah.
And another very interesting thing they did, you remember the time that Alison Felix fought a battle with her sponsor over wanting to cut her money when she was pregnant?
Yes.
Well, British athletics have funded a couple of our athletes through maternity leave on the full. They were just fully funded, saying, look, we've got to do it properly. You're having a baby, you're going to come back, and we'll look after you. So, sadly, Jesse and Harry are just not going to get funding this year because the two implications of COVID. One is to say that we recognize that some athletes were unable to perform this year, and it would be unfair to drop them off. And then saying, well, actually, COVID and the cancellation of the anniversary games has cost us so much money that it's just not there this year. Now, I just want to ask you one more thing about this.
Sure.
The one argument against our system that I've heard is that if you take a 21-year-old athlete who you see as having the potential to reach the next Olympic final, and you offer them something approaching $35,000, is there the danger that they think they have arrived rather than keeping them hungry to achieve?
Yeah. Well, who the person that comes to mind, one second, it's my neighbors are outside. I just want to make sure we're okay. Okay. Remember David Oliver? We love David Oliver. Mm-hmm. And I remember David telling me when he was running 13.3, he was running 13.2, he was selling shoes in a Foot Locker store. And that it wasn't until that the men's 110 high hurdles was so tough that I think when he won his first title is when he finally got some money. And he and I talked one time about the British system in particular. And at the time, this is 2007, 2009, there were some athletes in the system that were rather mediocre. And I think at the beginning of the system, you guys, the federation understood that. This was before Mo was, a good day for Mo was placing 6th. Yeah. And in fact, in 2009, Mo was thinking of quitting. It took, Ian Stuart and some of the folks in performance to tell him, hey, maybe if you change your training a little bit, maybe if you find a training partner, it might be different. And they found things in Van Komene, who I think is brilliant. He's a character, but he's brilliant. Built things up in the late Neil Black. You guys had tremendous management. I think there's some positive, negative. I think in the place it's at now, I think the a 21-year-old realizes if he gets $36,000, that's pretty good. But as you and I both know, it's not going to take care of everything, but it sure helps. But don't they also get massage treatment, all these other things? And that's what I thought. I mean, I just remember I was at the Great North Run, and you remember how they would have the city games a couple days beforehand.
Yes.
And I'm sitting in the little dining room. Mo's having dinner, Neil Black's having dinner, a few of the other athletes, and Neil's given several people. He's done 10 massages that afternoon, and the British athlete. I was just kind of noticing. British athletes are being taken. This is 2012, 13, being taken care of pretty good, and I'm just going. You know what? This is really a good system. A lot of Americans would like this, And the thing that happens at the big meets in the U.S., when Adidas was sponsoring the Randall's Island Grand Prix, Spencer Nell, the Adidas guy, made sure there was a massage therapist there, and all the athletes are taken care of. When the Prefontaine goes on, Cap does that same thing too. John Capriati makes sure that's just a quality that they know. But not every meet in the U.S. does that, And I came to think, I started going to meets in the UK to learn how you guys did things, and observing how your athletes were treated was one of them. I believe what you guys did between 2007 and 2011 was phenomenal. I believe what you've done. I was worried after 2015, 2016. 2019 was Mo wasn't there. That was the difference. And you had some bad luck in the relays, and you had some force. You're not going to win medals all the time. And the truth is, you're not the United States. That's the other thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, just one thing, just so that I don't mislead anyone. Our top athletes will get less money because it's means tested. And, if you've got a massive contract with other sponsors, then they say, well, look, we're going to cut what we give you because you don't need it as much as somebody else does.
That makes sense. Let's talk about So I think overall, I think it's a very good system. I admire it. I wish the U.S. would swipe the relay idea and put it like Mike Rogers. Mike is a tremendous relay runner, and we were just talking we're doing a series on Jessie Beard. Jessie, she's taken second in U.S. championships. Yeah, she's a fine 400 runner. She's an amazing relay athlete, and they should be recognized for that. I just think that that's a big deal. And the 4x1 is the one that drives me crazy. It's I just don't understand why we drop so many batons. Going into the winter 2020, how will COVID affect 2021 indoor season? What do you think right now?
Well, it seems to be a commitment to do them, but of course the fact that they're indoor means that there's a bigger health risk. So how many spectators you can allow, whether everyone can fund. I mean, Britain is not having an indoor Grand Prix because they say we can't fund it without spectators.
Wow.
So I don't know. I mean, I'll be able to see how it goes. Last year I went to 3 indoor events and loved them, and I'd have loved to have done the same again next year. But I just don't think I can because it's just going to be too big a risk.
Yeah. I just and am I missing something? Why is World Athletics still pushing a World Indoor Champs in Nanjing? Do they actually think people are going to go? I sometimes get frustrated with our friends in Monaco. I understand that Lord Coe wants to globalize the sport. Awesome. But, there was a meet that was being planned in 2018 or 2017, I believe, for Uganda. Not Uganda. No. Was it? It may have been Uganda. It was going to be the 50th anniversary of the state of Uganda, of the country of Uganda, and the state of Lagos, I think, or their capital, and they end up canceling the meet. And I was just running my idea. Okay, I know they have meets all over Africa, but at the time there was some real political and dangerous things going on there. They ended up canceling at the last minute. I was really surprised and delighted that the international events in Kenya have gone well without a hitch. That was a big deal. I'm concerned about the European indoors in lovely Istanbul, but then Europeans are going to tell me, well, Larry, you live in the United States. You think your little president's been really helpful with anything? True. So, but Nanjing, and I know that we'll have some type of vaccine and stuff then. But again, it's a major indoor event, and should they have exchanged it with someone else like Belgrade and put off Nanjing for a few years? I'd love to go there and love to learn about Nanjing, but I just don't know if it's the time right now.
I certainly don't think it is.
Yeah, it's just kind of scary. And then continued whereabouts issues. So Elijah Maningwa, we had that he was banned, and the difference was Elijah's the first one who just said, I did it. I screwed up. I'm going to take the 2 years and I'll come back clean. I've got to give him a little bit of respect for that. I read his excuses for missing the 3 tests, and it included a very large alligator involvement. And I will keep those because I will use those excuses for something in my life. But I found a bit much. But I also see that they're going back after the women's 400 champion from Bahrain, and because they don't like that she was let off by AIU. So we'll have to see what happens there. Any deep thoughts on whereabouts?
Well, I mean, at times I have been sympathetic to athletes who've missed tests. But when I speak to other athletes, I find that they're not at all sympathetic because they say, look, this is the deal. World Athletics says you can compete in our championship, but you have to make yourself available for testing during this 1 hour slot. And, that guarantees a fair playing field. And so just do it. Just organize your life. I mean, like the one that I always feel sad about was Brianna Rollins-McNeil, who had a year's ban. And on one of her missed tests, she was in her hometown celebrating her Olympic gold medal. And on another one, she was at the White House being fitted for her gold medal. But athletes I talked to said, well, all she needed to do was fill in the form to say that she would be at the White House, or that she needed to change her time for that week. And she simply failed to do so.
Yeah. No. And that's what I hear too. I mean, I've interviewed 25 athletes over the summer, and I've asked each one of them about whereabouts, and not one of them said that it was they pretty much all say it's the price you pay for being an elite athlete.
Yeah.
And they say that they can understand missing one test, maybe two tests, but then you stay on top of it. I noticed we haven't heard anything more from Mr. Coleman. I think he's appealing everything. I just think that athletics integrity is doing their job, and that's what they're supposed to be doing, you know? And it's the only way we show some integrity in the sport. Well, my friend,
let me give you one quick example. I mean, Hannah England, who is as honest as the day is long, said to me that on an occasion, the testers came and rang her doorbell and she was asleep and didn't hear it. But fortunately, her husband did. So it is certainly possible to miss a test, and that's why you're allowed to miss 3. But you know, if you've missed 1 or if you've missed 2, you've got to be pretty certain and careful not to miss the 3rd one. And that's why people tend not to have sympathy with Coleman, because, you know, if you're already on strike 2, to go shopping and say, well, they can call me if they want me.
Yeah. I think you are correct, my friend, and so ends Athletics Chat 37. Stuart, thank you for chatting this week. Stay safe, my friend, and we will catch up next week. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, Athletics Chat 37 with Stuart Weir. And if you like us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you love us, subscribe on the YouTube. Bye. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. It's our program, Socialing the Distance, and it's episode 27, not 37, like I said before, and it's the epilogue. Sorry about that. Yeah, I took calculus, but I still can't count. You know, I got to take my shoes off and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, a sip, one sec. This is my Hotel Utica cup, just so you know. I went there in 2005. It's a famous hotel of the United States. I was up there for the Utica Boilermaker and the Distance Running Hall of Fame, and it was a lot of fun. I think Jeff Hollister, the Nike sports marketing deity, was honored that year, and I hadn't had my cataract surgery, but I still have the mug. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so you know the deal. Stuart Weir, our European correspondent who lives in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world. And then I'm in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, in Jefferson County, which the state was won for the president-elect, but my county went to the current president. So it's a fascinating world we live in, isn't it? May you live in interesting times. And we do. Speaking of interesting times, our friend Stuart was on a briefing with the IOC and the Tokyo LOC about what the heck's happening in Tokyo. And he gives it a 60-40 chance that we're going to have a Tokyo Olympics in 2021. Mr. Bach, the presidente, noticed that, or commented, excuse me, not noticed, but he commented that it used to be that media people could go to event in the Olympics, but we're going to probably have to have tickets now because they're going to really have to control how many people are in these facilities, indoor and outdoor. I'm not sure how much it will affect track and field, because track and field is an outdoor facility. If I go, I'll be sitting up in the top rows, but I'm very concerned about COVID. Are we going to have vaccines? What is going to happen? While much of the rest of the world may be very accepting about the idea of a vaccine, the U.S. has a lot of bad talking about vaccines. I mean, the flu vaccine, a lot of people still don't take. And I've had to take it the last couple of years because of my heart surgery. I really don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. There's other things that I can worry about. And someone's cutting grass in front of my house. Really? Oh, wow. They're doing leaves for us, so that's really nice. I'm just trying to hear myself. Sorry, I hope it's not bothering you guys. But hey, you know that I actually live in a real neighborhood and all those kind of things. So it's keeping it very, very special. So what Stuart and I talked about was Tokyo, whether Tokyo is going to happen or not. And yes, he thinks it is 60-40. We also talked about funding in the UK, which is a little different than funding over here. Elite athletes are sponsored by shoe companies. USATF gives top athletes money. They give athletes who don't have sponsorship money, I think about $30,000. In the UK, they give the top tiered athletes who don't have a lot of funding the equivalent of $36,000. Then those are called podium athletes, and the athletes who could do well, they give, I think, in about the 20 range. But on top of that, they get massage, they get medical, they get coaching, a few other things. So it's a pretty good program. The part that I admire the most is the way they do the relays. 23 athletes are in the British relay program, including Martin Rooney, who pretty much you give him a baton and he finds a way to get a medal in there. So it's a pretty good investment. And I think if you're really talking about the theme since the year 2000, you've got the reinvigoration of American track and field, going from where we had always had good sprinters and jumpers, but to middle distances, distance runners, and long distance runners, and some of the field events that we had a dearth of experience in. You've got the British system that, after about 2003, really reinvented itself and is continuing to do well. And I think this investment in there is a big deal. My concern with British athletics is their overall funding. I think they need to make a phone call to Alan Pascoe, the guy that saved them in 2002 and 2003. And then what's happened in China with the technical events, because they have just become superb there. And it just tells you that our sport's so global factor. We also talked about athletes' integrity and the number of whereabout busts that they've been having. Elijah Managua surprised all of us, the London 2017 champion. And what did he surprise us about? Well, first of all, he had some very curious excuses for missing 3 tests, but to his credit, he accepted the 2-year ban, and he's taking it. And you got to respect him for that. What do I think is going to happen over the winter? Not sure. We'll keep our fingers crossed. I'm hoping indoor meets are going to happen, but they're indoors. This is our first complete winter with COVID. So stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, epilogue 27, not 37. This is not socially the distance, athletics chat number 27. If you like us, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you love us, subscribe on YouTube. Larry Eder signing off. Talk to you soon.